What's up? What's happening on a Thursday? It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Jam-packed show for you today. We spent a lot of it, of course, talking about the Commanders' 2024 schedule, which is out. Anthony Haney, it is available for us. There's no more speculating. We can plan road trips if we want. Remember last year? Actually, we should do that again maybe tomorrow. We should do a road trip draft. Which games would we want to go to in the NFL?
Yeah. I mean, I won't be here, but
You're not here tomorrow?
No. My granddad's funeral is tomorrow.
Oh, I'm sorry I didn't know that. You never let me know.
Oh, my bad.
And maybe it was on the schedule, and I
think I had emailed CK. That's probably what it was. I emailed CK over the weekend. Yeah.
Well, I hope you and your family have it's not like have a great time, but, are able to honor your grandfather tomorrow. But, okay, maybe next week when you're back.
Okay.
You and I will do a road trip draft.
All right, bet.
So that'll be a good time. Today, though, we can take a look at the full, indeed, schedule, which is out, and we knew a decent amount of yesterday, or at least a couple of chunks of yesterday. But seeing the full thing, I think, is genuinely really interesting, Ant, because the first part of the season has almost all of the Commanders' travel. They are at Tampa. They're back here against New York. They're at Cincy. They're at Arizona. And Cincy to Arizona is a short week. So that kind of stinks. You have your longest trip of the season from Cincinnati on Monday night to Arizona on a Sunday. And Arizona is the longest trip of the season on a short week. But then you don't leave the I-95 corridor again until week 15 at New Orleans. Because you're Cleveland at home, at Baltimore. You don't even leave the greater DMV, we'll call it, to avoid any controversy of whether Baltimore's in the DMV or not. Carolina, Bears at home, Carolina at home, at New York, so you can take a train. They probably will fly, but you could. Steelers at Philly, same thing, could take a train. Home Dallas, home Tennessee, bye week. And then you're at New Orleans, and ultimately your final road game's at Dallas. I feel like I'm missing a road game on this schedule. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, I got them all.
Yep.
Wow. It just they're spread out / at Baltimore only feels so road gamey. At New York, at Philly only feels so road gamey in terms of the travel. And in terms of kind of a repetition, in terms of a travel standpoint, you can't ask for a much friendlier schedule than this. We knew based off of the opponents that Washington was going to have to travel fewer miles than anyone else in the league. But we knew that going in. And to see it on paper is like, wow. And to have this stretch in the middle of the season, the second month, 5, 6, 7, 8, where you literally don't leave the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, with Baltimore being the farthest you go. And frankly, to get from Ashburn to Baltimore, it takes almost the exact amount of time that it would take you to get from Ashburn to Landover. So, we're really talking about the same commute for the players and the coaches. It's pretty good. On the other end of the equation, week 14 bye with no Thursday nighter to give you a mini bye in the early part of the season. That's nasty work by the NFL. Week 14 bye for a second straight year?
Third, I think, isn't it?
I don't think it's the third straight year. I think it's the second straight, but maybe.
I think it's third.
Still, that's either way. Even if it's just the second. That's nasty work right there.
But would you rather have an early bye, an extremely early bye like week 6, or would you rather have week 14?
So I would rather have 6 versus 14. I think I'd rather have 6.
Really?
And I go back to something that Lorenzo Alexander taught me a long time ago when we were prepping for his season. It actually turned out, I think, before his last season in Buffalo. And I think they had an early bye or whatever. And he's like, honestly, that's the halfway point of the season. because by the time you get through training camp, like if you got to think of their season, their grind really starts in August, like or late July. So if you're going to go late July into all through August for training camp, a couple of preseason games, which the starters aren't playing that much, but those practices are tough, and it's a lot of like mental load. You have the week to reset before the season, but by the time you get to week 6, like you're in mid-October. That's basically the halfway point between July and January. So, yeah, maybe I'd rather have like week 8, week 9, like the true halfway point of the regular season if I'm a team who's got playoff aspirations, because I'm going to be playing a little bit longer. And really, like what the Commanders had last year wasn't too bad. You have like week 5, Thursday Night Football. So you're not too burnt out by the time you have to double up, if you will, Sunday, Thursday. Then you get the mini bye. Then you play a bunch of Sundays, and then you have your actual bye. Although the Commanders had the weird bit last year because they played on Thanksgiving, where they had like one game in like 20 days, and that sucks. That sucks for them. It sucks for us. It sucks for everybody. Like, don't do a Thursday night Thursday Night Island in the middle of a bye. Like, that's a wacky bit. But yeah, I think like week 4, having no extra time off until week 14 is pretty rough.
But I think if you are gearing up for, playoff aspiration, or you have playoff aspirations, I think the week 14 bye would be better than week 6. I think ideally everybody would love a mid-season bye. We just haven't, had that luxury, to be honest. Like the last 2 seasons, we've had week 14 byes. Before that, we had an extremely early bye, I think.
Yeah, I feel
Week
like the
4.
1 year they had like a week 4, like something stupid early
week
bye.
4, and then like before that, we did actually have mid-season byes, but
yeah, you just get caught in that grind. I think playoff teams would also, like some of them, if you're getting hot, then you get a bye and it kind of cools you off. Like they're not gonna like that. Then like there's no science to it, and every player's different. Nevertheless, every team.
Yeah.
But back to the games that are being played. I think the thing that stands out for me early on in this schedule is you're going to get a real test of the secondary early. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but then we got even more because we didn't know the week 3 game. We knew Tampa, we knew New York, we knew Arizona. But you're going to get Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, followed by Malik Neighbors, followed by Jamar Chase and T. Higgins as of right now, and then Marvin Harrison Jr. Those are your first 4 games. Then you want to test your mettle, your physicality. May I introduce you to weeks 5 through 8? Cleveland, maybe the most physical team in the league. Baltimore, if it's not Cleveland or San Francisco, it's them. Carolina's got some nastiness to them defensively. And they've tried to rebuild their offensive line. Like, I'd imagine they're a pretty run-first team. That's going to try to get downhill with those big guards and mash you a little bit, which is not going to feel very good coming off Cleveland and Baltimore. And then Chicago, I have no idea what they are, other than they've destroyed you the last couple of years. And at least you're not playing them on a Thursday night that feels existential as the last couple have. So then you get at New York, Steelers, at Philly, Dallas. So you have like that little you got 3 of that 4 is divisional games.
That's also the weird thing about the schedule. Like, we played both of our New York games before we even play another divisional rival.
I feel like that always happens with Washington and New York. What is it about them putting Washington and New York early? And like I guess there was McLaurin's rookie year, they played the Eagles in game 1. It feels like they never play Dallas early.
Nah, we don't play Dallas early.
It's like if it's not late November, you're not seeing Cowboys Commanders on the schedule.
Yeah.
So then you got Tennessee bye at New Orleans. Talk about a road trip draft number 1 pick right there.
Yes, sir.
New Orleans in December. Philly at home, Atlanta at home. That could be a Saturday. And then at Dallas, week 18. Who knows? Because it's week 18 and those are the rules. We'll take your calls. What do you think of the Commanders' schedule? That's it. Tampa, New York, Cincy. There's your Monday nighter. Arizona, Cleveland, Baltimore, Carolina, Bears, Giants, Steelers, Philly, Thursday. Dallas, Tennessee, bye. New Orleans, Philly, Atlanta, Dallas. Some of you have that memorized by now, and you have thoughts. Share them with us. 301-230-0980. Take your calls next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Coming up in about an hour 15. Never read the comments. And I got to say, Ant, if anybody is liked something that we've done over the last week, or found something that we've done interesting, go to your local YouTube-enabled device and leave a comment on it with what you liked or the thought that you had, because this has been probably the slimmest week of comments to choose from for Never Read the Comments that we've had in the history of Never Read the Comments. It's not. I feel like we all got to the draft and then did we all just take our foot off the pedal? What happened? Have we? I don't know, Ant. Have we been doing a bad job? I think we've been doing okay.
Yeah.
Commenters, viewers, listeners, people who can hear my voice. Where did our sharpness go? We don't have an off season. Our time is not up. This is the real thing. This counts. What are we doing? Just slim pickings. But we'll find some good ones. It's kind of, you know what? It's kind of like it. It's kind of like the 2024 NBA draft.
Whoa.
There may not be as many good ones to go around for everybody, but all we got to do is find the right ones for us.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Did we ever? We gotta go listen to Will Dawkins on the Junkies and see if there's anything interesting that Will said.
Oh yeah.
Because we're gonna really kick our NBA draft coverage in high gear, starting maybe even tomorrow, but certainly next week here on the show. Also, a little later on in the show, Logan Paulsen's thoughts on the schedule, 5 o'clock. We'll also, I mean, honestly, let's be real. The schedule release day, it's Team Social Media Christmas. So who had the best videos? What were some of the highlights of some of the team social media videos that released the schedule? We'll have those for you in about 15 minutes. Also later on, 6 o'clock today, a conversation with Kristen Lappas, who is a documentarian and director. She produced the new ESPN film Full Court Press that chronicled Caitlin Clark and DC's very own Kiki Rice through the 2023 season, along with Kamilla Cordoso from South Carolina. Really, really tremendous film that's available now. And we got a chance to talk to Kristen, and we'll air that conversation for you coming up at 6 p.m. More now on the schedule, though, Anthony. And we are taking your calls if folks want to get them in. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980 is the phone numbers. All the lines are available, so go ahead and hit us up there, 301-230-0980. I think the other thing that kind of stands out for me and about this schedule is the bulk of NFC games in the back half of it. And obviously the Commanders are going to play more NFC teams, and they're going to play more NFC teams late because we know that they're going to always end with divisional opponents. The schedule is going to be kind of packed with more NFC opponents or more divisional opponents late. But like when you think of the teams that you could be competing with for a playoff spot, like New Orleans is that kind of team. And there they are. You're at their place, week 15. We have no idea what Philly's going to be. I'd imagine that they're going to be better than Washington, depending on what Jalen Hurts is. But there they are, week 16. Atlanta, we're pretty sure is going to be a lot better this year. They got first year everything. First year coach, first year quarterback, first year coordinators, the whole deal. Like, what are they? They're sitting there week 17. And then, of course, we'll see what Dallas is, and there's week 18. But you got a chance to move and shake in the NFC. And even, Tennessee is obviously there in week 13 for you as an AFC opponent. But Dallas, Philly, New York, like that's how you start the back half of your season. So there's just it's a schedule to me, Ant, that as we look at it right now, and we could have probably done this segment yesterday just looking at the opponents, but now like it really comes into clarity seeing them in order and kind of how it all falls out. There's opportunity everywhere. Now, we still have no idea if the Commanders are going to be any good. And that's ultimately going to be the deciding factor of what their record is. But if I look at starting with Tampa, New York's right there. We'll see what Cincinnati is with Burrow coming back off the injury. Arizona, who the hell knows what they are in year 2 under Gannon. Cleveland, giant question mark. Baltimore's got new coordinators, or a new coordinator on defense with McDonald bouncing out, and they lost some personnel. Like, there's a lot of question marks on this schedule. And the Commanders, of course, are always a question mark on, Commanders versus whoever. It's question mark versus question mark. But it feels like a very outside of the Chiefs, like transitional time in the NFL. And I have no idea where a lot of these teams are going to fall.
Yeah, I'm also just looking at a lot of the teams from a quarterback standpoint. A lot of the quarterbacks on our schedule don't necessarily scare me per se.
Right.
The year after we won the division, we had Mahomes, we had Aaron Rodgers, we had
murderers row.
Yeah, quarterback galore,
and they got murdered.
Yeah. So I look at the schedule now. I mean, you got Burrow, you got Lamar.
Well, let's go through it. So you got Baker with a new offensive coordinator, right?
Well, Baker's cool. He doesn't, I'm not
Baker's,
shivering.
Right, you're not shivering, yeah. And he lost Canellis.
Yeah,
Canellis is now in Carolina. So you got new coordinator and let's call him historically uneven quarterback. I like Baker more than most people do, but it's not like I love him. I'm not like I'm psyched if that's my quarterback for sure. You got Daniel Jones with another no, they kept their coordinator, right? They kept Kafka, and Dable's kind of the coordinator anyway.
Yeah.
But it's Daniel Jones.
But he's the Commander's killer.
That's true. Week 3, Burrow coming off injury, new coordinator. Week 4, Kyler coming off injury. Kind of. I guess he finished last year.
Yeah, he did.
Cleveland, Watson. Is he good anymore? Doesn't look like it. Coming off injury, who knows? Lamar, okay, feel pretty good about that one. Week 6, that's going to be tough sledding.
Yeah.
Carolina, Bryce Young, knew everything. Is he good now? We'll find out. Is he good by then? We'll find out. Week 8, Caleb Williams. We'll find out. Commander killer Daniel Jones again. Week 9. So far, through 9 weeks, I would say Daniel Jones is the third scariest quarterback.
Yeah.
Now, that might have to do every bit with his record against the Commanders, but behind Lamar and Burrow, you're doing all right. Steelers, Russ, who knows how he fits with Arthur? Who knows how either of them fits with Arthur Smith? So you got new quarterbacks, new coordinators. At Philly, Jalen Hurts was an MVP 2 years ago, and last year he really wasn't that good. Dallas, Dak's a very, very good quarterback, but, you know, he has his weeks. And Dan Quinn, I'm sure, knows him very well. That's going to be fun. Week 13, Will Levis, okay. Like, I have no idea if that dude's any good. I have no idea if he'll be playing by week 13. Week 15 at New Orleans, like, he's a big question mark, right? Derek Carr, capable, certainly capable, but wasn't that good last year. So in year 2, does he find his stride? Week 16, Philly. We talked about Hurts. Week 17, Cousins, presumably, coming off injury. How does he gel in year 1 in Atlanta? And then week 18 at Dallas. It's Dak potentially in a big spot, which is the worst place for Dak to be. Dak in not big spots, amazing. Dak in big spots, historically, not great, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, to your point, like, obviously, we have no idea what Jaden Daniels is going to be, and presuming that he's a starter. And if it's not Jaden, it's Marcus Mariota, and we know what that looks like, and it's not great. So I don't know how many of these you're going in feeling like you got the better guy, but certainly I feel like you go into these with the defense that you have put together here. Yep. If you're Dan Quinn, feeling like, yeah, we can win. We can win every week. Like, yeah, Baltimore's going to be tough sledding. Cincinnati, that could be really tough sledding if they're cooking, and especially if they don't trade Higgins. But every other game, is there an offense that terrifies you on their schedule, a quarterback that terrifies you? And again, I'm not picking them to win probably more than 8 games this year, and I might pick them less than that because I learned my lesson last year. But it's not this is what happens when you're bad. And we haven't, for all we know, New Orleans or Philly or Atlanta is like a 12-win team this year. So, and I mean, shoot, even with their terrible end, Philly was damn near a 12-win team last year. But as of now, it looks like a very competitive schedule. That's what I would call it.
Yeah, I think we can go in it. And this is my problem with the offseason, the schedule. I look at these teams, I look at the quarterbacks, I look at all of it. And I always go into the season thinking like we can win some of these games that we should win. And, we end up falling flat on our face. And that's the only thing I hate about the offseason. I just get too excited,
Yeah.
Oh, this could happen. Our defense could do this.
And you tell yourself every year, I'm not going to do it this year. I'm trying.
All right. And like, I'm right there with you, Craig. I'm not going to do it this year.
I'm trying to be – because, like, you stop seeing everybody else and you just see your own, and you're like, oh, I like this little double-barrel 7-on-7 thing. And Jaden seems to get the ball out pretty good. Oh, wow, this defense is creating some turnovers. That's cool. Because, like, the example I've been using is last year offseason, like, Eric Bieniemy comes in. Oh, man, he's really sticking it to him. Like, it's up-tempo. Like, they're running a bunch of plays. I love that. Their conditioning's going to be better. And even week 1, I remember I did a whole thing on their conditioning in week 1, how sharp they were in the fourth quarter against Arizona. And how I was like, this is why they did all that work in the spring. And the rest of the year, they were not very good in the first, second, third, or fourth quarters. The fourth quarter didn't matter for a lot of games for them by late in the season. So who knows if their conditioning was any good or not, because they weren't competitive early. But also, like, Bieniemy was all over everybody's ass to be like, you got to do this. We got run it again. And instead of us being like, oh, that's a sign that there's a lot of confusion and none of the players know what they're doing and they're probably really bad teaching this offense. This is a huge red flag problem. We were all like, Bieniemy's on it. Turns out, good, clean, crisp practices might be a better alternative to a coach yelling his head off every other snap.
Yeah.
So that's at least the optimism hope that we're selling this year. Or that I'm looking at this year, but I'm also like, maybe I just reserve judgment. But I don't know how good a radio that is. So there's that. When we get back, it's not good radio, but it's damn good video. All of these schedule release videos around the NFL, amazing, amazing work by social media teams and the people they collaborate with. Anthony and I will share some of our favorites. Some of them have sound, and others just some of the inside jokes that you say like, hey, when you get home, go watch this. We'll go around NFL social media Christmas next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Coming up at 5 o'clock, Logan chimes in on the schedule via Take Command. So you hear that coming up at 5. Never read the comments at 5:30. And I see some of these calls. Are we going to take any calls, or are we good to move on to the next thing? Because we were going to take calls in the last segment. And then nobody called, and now it looks like we got some calls. So I'm gonna start with Ross real quick, maybe on some Commanders thoughts, and then we can get to the best of NFL social media Christmas. All right, Ross, what's up, man? What you got for us? You're on the Hoffman Show.
What's going on, Hoffman? How you doing, bud?
I'm good.
That's what I'm talking about. So before I get started with Commanders, I may be Ross from Tampa, but once again, I'm from Indiana. Shout outs to Grassy Creek Elementary School. My ex-girlfriend's a second grade teacher there, and that is where the Colts did their scheduling release.
Oh, cool.
I was like, oh, that's awesome. And my wife is a Colts fan, so she didn't want to see our release, but she loves that show, Is It Cake? Now she's sold. Now she wants to go to the opener.
Okay, yeah, because the Commanders did the Is It
Tampa.
Cake? We tried to watch that during like some summer, like there's nothing else on. Couldn't get into it. Couldn't get into Is It Cake?
It looked like real stuff on there. I'm like, yo, I'm thinking.
That's not to say I'm not impressed by the Bakers.
They're good at what they do.
Yeah, no, I'm
God.
impressed at the skill level. For me, Is It Cake is an Instagram post, not a TV show. You know?
That's totally right. That's totally right. It's just a whole bunch of social media people doing their thing and just want to be on a show. So that's what that is.
Yeah,
but,
for sure. What else you got?
Do they send you guys down here for the games, or do you guys just stay in DC?
No, we're pretty much we're pretty DC based. Occasionally we'll take a road trip on our own, but Tampa. I will say this about Tampa.
Greg.
I will say this about Tampa. Best press food in the league. Like when I was traveling, when I was on the beat back in the day, best press food in the league. Tampa. Not a runaway. Minnesota's really, really good. Dallas actually does a really good job with that. But Tampa Bay press box food for us snobby press folks, about as good as it gets.
Oh, yeah. And my buddy's disappointed in me because I told him, hey, let's wait and see how the schedule unfolds, because I promised him I'd come out to Cincinnati because Indianapolis, my family's there. I can drive down I-74 and go see a Bengals game, but they're so close together. I told him I couldn't do it. But before I hop off here, man, I've been listening to you since draft week, and I'm really into the show. Are you a DC homegrown guy, or did you travel around and end up in DC? Like, what's your story, if you don't mind? And I appreciate you, Craig. I hope you did get on that marathon, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we broke the sub 2 hour on the half marathon, and then we hurt real bad for a couple days, but that's all right. For those that don't know, that are newer listeners to the show, I moved here in 2015. There's a much longer version of the story, but I actually got hired by the Team 980 that was currently, at the time, ESPN 980 under different ownership. And then they cut the position after they had left me or brought me up here from Dallas. And I, 6 months later, wound up starting part-time and then ultimately full-time over at 106.7 The Fan. Obviously now us and The Fan are under the same ownership, as 980's bounced around a little bit. And I've been doing the show for almost 2 years now, and it's a good time. I grew up in South Carolina, but I've been in DC since 2015. Love it here. Met my wife here, and it's where hopefully we'll raise a family one day, and have no intentions on leaving. So that's the short version of my story, and appreciate you finding the show during draft week and sticking with us, man.
Love it, man. Keep doing your thing, buddy. Big fan over here, man. Take
Thanks.
care, Greg.
Appreciate it. Let's go to Robert. Robert, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show. What you got on the Commander schedule?
Hope you're doing well, and thank you for accepting the call. I think we talked a couple of weeks ago regarding the same topic, and I just wanted to reiterate my thoughts about people getting very worked up regarding scheduling and who is going to win what at this early stage of the game. And my concern, again, is going to be the number of callers and the number of people calling in. And once that team gets to 0-3 to 0-5 in the first 5 games, we're going to start talking about job changing and firing and getting rid of people. And we're going through this deja vu all over again. What can be done to kind of measure off this this impact of negativity that eventually is going to show up, even if the team breaks even at 3-3 for the first 6 games. You're going to still have this measure of negativity that's going to be ringing loud and clear among callers, and then again, that's kind of egged on by certain talk show hosts, which I'm not going to mention here. I just don't want this season to be turning into a total negative Nelly from the negativity that's going to be showing up if there are a couple of losses on the team's schedule. How can that be overcome? How can that be counteracted in some kind of way from guys like you, guys like Kevin, from your end, to help to balance this out into something that's realistic? The team is not going to the Super Bowl at the end of this season, and it's not going to win the NFC East. And I think that people are getting worked up to a frenzy over something that's going to be almost damn near non-existent, and then begin to lose track of what is what's really based in reality. And your comments on that, if you can.
Yeah. I don't know. There's part of me that it's super pessimistic and doesn't have a lot good to tell you, Robert, because I think that there are certain people that are Super Bowl or bust, and the reality is those same people that if you win the Super Bowl and then the next year you were to lose the Super Bowl, they would consider that a failure. And they would be upset and want people fired and wonder how you can't win the Super Bowl every year. And those people just don't really understand how sports work and that nobody wins every year. Even the Chiefs are going to lose at some point. They might three-peat. They're really good. And their expectation is to win. But you cannot win it all and still have a lot of success. And, of course, the Commanders are in a very different place right now organizationally where they need to measure their success by growth, by playing a certain way. And I think for me, like, here's the best answer I can give you, as I've talked around it long enough and stalled to come up with a coherent thought. I'm going to talk about what I see and what I think is important. And if you agree with me that the play style and the growth of especially Jaden Daniels, but other players, and maybe the redemption of a guy like Emmanuel Forbes, if you think that those things are important beyond the scoreboard, then you're going to enjoy this season a lot more. And I would tend to think that most people want to come to sports to find joy and not to just be angry. But that's not the case. And some people think that I'm an idiot. Some people think that I'm brilliant. And there's a whole swath of people in between. And that is the nature of doing a job where I am paid to give opinions. But if you, here's what I would tell you, Robert. If you like my analysis and you think I know what I'm talking about, I will be talking about the things that I think are important and judging them not based off of the scoreboard, but what is actually happening on the field the way I see it. And that's about all I can do. And I would say if you have a group of friends that are fans, you guys can talk about those same things. And when they win, it's going to feel better to talk about. When they lose, it's going to feel not quite as good. And that's also the nature of sports.
And I think that your approach is the correct approach. And I think your approach is the measured approach. It's just that you've got some, and I don't want to use a pejorative, but you've got some loudmouth people here
Sure.
who will want, for the sake of just having nothing else to do, to start preaching doom and gloom to these young men out on the field. And
well, see, that's Robert. That's where I disagree with you, though, because I don't think that is going to infiltrate the building. Certainly not as much as it has in the past, because I do think that like the people in the building now have them way more focused on the right things, but also the kind of person they're bringing in the building now. Like, I don't think that the negativity is going to affect these guys because they're focused on what they got to do. Robert, appreciate the call. We got to run. We'll take more of your calls if we want to next, 301-230-0980, or we'll get to what we were going to do this segment, which was the best of the NFL social media Christmas, the best of all of these schedule release videos next on the Team 980. You're funny, Ant. Funny guy over there. Funny guy. Or if it's on the screen this way. That guy, the guy in that box right there, if you're watching on YouTube, because we are streaming live on YouTube, it's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It is NFL social media Christmas, schedule release day. And boy, were there some presents that were left on the Twitter tree yesterday. So many good ones. And a couple of teams have really, I think, like, starting to get toward the Lifetime Achievement Awards. And the Chargers are the king of that. I don't know that we have time to even get into all the Chargers right now. We might have to just do a separate, like, I retweeted a thread of all, or as many of the Chargers things as I could earlier. Like, a guy went through and was like, here are my favorite Easter eggs from the Chargers schedule release. And he just kept adding stuff to the thread because he kept finding new things. Like, there's so many hidden gems in there. The level of detail is remarkable. They did, if you haven't seen it, a recreation of the video game The Sims.
Yep.
And it's amazing. The Titans last year struck gold when they went out on Broadway, the main party street in Nashville, and asked random people what the logos of the teams were. And they found one of the girls who was a star of last year's show. They had her go out on the Broadway and do year 2.
Hey guys, Red Stallion Girl. I'm here back on Broadway.
Oh, the Bengals. Yeah, I love the Bengals.
Love the Bengals.
Love
Sounds like she's really knowledgeable. This is going to go great.
Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Problem is, when they flash the logo, Anthony, it's not the Bengals.
Who was it?
It's the Bears.
Oh, wow.
They peaked in 1970.
That was the New York Jets. Peaked in 1970.
And-
Over the cheese.
Okay.
Packers, home of the cheese.
Okay, so Alex Earl's boyfriend.
That one's so amazing. Alex Earl's like a TikToker star that she is known now as Braxton Berrios' boyfriend or girlfriend, thanks to Hard Knocks, where they profiled them. And just the thing that's so great about this one is the woman is a bachelorette, and she's like in I guess shorts and has like a full like feathery gown, not gown, but sash on.
Yeah.
And sunglasses, but also kind of like a feathery crown hat. It's just classic Nashville bachelorette. Alex Earl's boyfriend's team. Dolphins, September 30th.
That's the Dallas Cowboys. That's Dak Prescott.
That one was crazy.
Again, classic bachelorette. You got two girls, probably bridesmaids, pink sashes on like the, I don't know if I'm saying it right, like it goes across the sash.
I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, the bachelorette sash. It goes across. It's very confidently. Cowboys. That's Dak Prescott. Nope, it's the Colts.
I wouldn't want to be a table around them.
That's good. Buffalo Bills wouldn't want to be a table.
He will go on fourth every time. He just don't care. Like, he's like me if I play the NFL on my phone.
That's Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions.
The Super Bowl's for a consecutive, like, maybe like 3 to 4 years straight with Tom Brady.
And then what happened?
They flashed the Patriots logo on the screen and the word, what happened? Yeah. Amazing.
My favorite actor is a fan of theirs.
Oh.
My favorite actor is a fan of theirs. The Los Angeles Chargers. You know why that one's surprising, Anthony?
Why?
Because that means the Chargers have fans.
They got rid of Kirk Cousins and they shouldn't have.
Oh, the Vikings. Okay, got that right.
They have David Carr is what I know about them.
They have David Carr. Not they had David Carr. Not they murdered David Carr, but the Houston Texans had David Carr. At least it was the Texans. By the way, the cowboy hats on the previous guys, the Kirk Cousins guys have cowboy hats and takes.
They got rid of Kirk Cousins and they shouldn't have.
Yeah, those guys. Except for that one's the Commanders. They just reused the same bite.
Oh, wow.
It's great.
I don't know that one either. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the Jaguars, which, I mean, who really does know?
If you could describe their team in 3 words, what would it be?
Going downhill.
That's the Bengals. Yikes.
Eli Manning. For
That's
sure.
pretty much it.
Oh no, see that's why do people hate the Colts? Why does nobody know the Colts? Why did they just put Eli Manning on the Colts? It's the wrong Manning. You hate to see it.
I don't know who those guys
I
are.
don't know who they are either.
This guy, by the way, is wearing a shirt with what I presume to be his wife's face on it. It's like a Hawaiian shirt with the flowers and short sleeve button down, Hawaiian style, but randomly there's a woman's face all over it. I don't think that's a famous person, but it might be. But it also might be this guy's wife.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, what team is he talking about?
Terrible at this.
I'm so bad.
Oh, it's the Jags again. Still nobody knows
They
them.
have fans?
They have fans. That's the Texans.
I love the Titans.
I do too.
Best team in the AFC South.
We're from Tennessee, me and him, so hey, go Titans.
They've been really good lately.
I like your quarterback.
Their fan base is awesome.
Good fan base. You were here for the draft. This place was like Times Square on New Year's Eve.
Good job, Titans. Bravo. Bravo to the Titans social media team. What else we got in? Who else did you like from the schedule releases yesterday?
So I have the Ravens over here, and basically, I'll preface it. It was a 4-minute video, but I had to cut it down.
Of course. All right,
So-
what you got?
All right, here we go. It starts off with Jim Harbaugh and a messenger, a Raven fan, I presume.
Nice work. Somehow, you always come through. But now, I've got a very important message that I need you to deliver.
Oh my God, Coach. I have been waiting for this moment my whole life.
Oh, wow,
Now
that's a
you secure
Baltimore
the
accent.
schedule. There's no time to waste. Go straight to the airport. Grab that flight. Here's the company card. Don't let me down.
Straight to the airport. No messing around. Coach,
No messing around.
where is he, Dad? Where's he at? Where is he? He ain't even here.
He's running, man.
He's running.
Coach Harbaugh, great to see you.
See, I've been looking all over for you, Coach.
Welcome to LA.
Thank you. I got a very important message from Super Bowl winner John Harbaugh.
No. My dad told me to never take anything with nickel.
Okay, fine, but listen. He said you better have 53 place settings at the dinner table when the Ravens come to play.
Duly noted. Tell him I said hello.
And he also said he's Mom's favorite.
Duly noted.
You're going down, Harbaugh.
Oh,
The Ravens, yes.
so Jim was in on it.
I think so. It was actually hilarious.
That's good stuff.
Yes.
That one was definitely good. It just they found the dude with the thickest Baltimore Han accent.
Yeah.
That is.
He
Whew.
sent them all the way out to LA.
The
That's pretty
word I'm gonna use is that is particular. That accent. I know the Patriots caught your eye too.
The Patriots got one.
Set the scene for us.
Yeah. So basically, Julian Edelman, Gronk, they're these the schedule breakers. They crack the code, and they spend like the entire 4 minutes cracking the code, I guess, for the schedule.
Okay. Is there like a clip that you can play from it?
Yes. Here we go.
Okay.
You're telling me that this kid cracked the code that it took the whole offseason to come up with?
The art of scouting lies in the ability to translate observations into actionable intelligence that could be used as a competitive advantage on a game day. Are you going to keep plagiarizing football scouting methods, or do you have any original thoughts of your own?
My boy is wicked smart.
Hey, you like apples? How you like them apples? Sucker! I love apples.
Dude, Gronk and the ad-libs afterwards, the commentary, hilarious.
That's amazing. A couple of teams went with the trend of crushing things.
Oh yeah.
The machine that just like pulverizes stuff. The Chiefs did that. Someone else did that. I think. I mean, the Chargers is just again incredible. The Rams was pretty cool. It just got boring after a little bit. They like did like almost a video game type car scene where they were rolling to different cities and like they had good references and stuff, but it just got needed to move a little bit. Needed to go at a faster pace. Speaking of faster pace, one of my favorite ones was the Dolphins. The Dolphins.
I don't think I've seen the Dolphins.
Had Tyreek Hill and Raheem Mostert sitting at a computer, and Tyreek goes, blah, 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 and they like speed up his fingers, like editing, and it's something that you and I would recognize from being in media, like editing a video. And then he's like, it's done. And Raheem's like, let's hit play. boom. And it's like presented by the NFL's fastest team and whatever their sponsor is. Sorry to the sponsor. I forgot. You paid a lot of money. You deserve the shout, but whatever. It's like from the NFL's fastest team and insert sponsor here, the world's fastest schedule release video. And they like very quickly scroll the entire schedule across the screen, and then cut back to Tyreek and Mostert. And they're like, it's perfect. And that's it. That's the video.
Wow. That's actually hilarious.
It's really funny. And that's, in social media age, can you get your whole one on? They did. They figured it out. As for more thoughts on the Commanders' schedule, Logan Paulsen with us next. It's Take Command on Thursday here on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app just after 5 o'clock. You know the day's top story. It's time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Today it's our beat. It is the schedule release, of course, yesterday in the NFL. Last night, 8 p.m. It came out. Logan and I talked about it on Take Command, which you can hear for the first time right now. The 2024 NFL schedule is out. The Commanders will play a couple of primetime games. They will start the season in Tampa, close with Dallas. Logan, when you look at some of the schedule analysis, a thing that I know you absolutely adore, you just can't get enough of it. The Commanders, I saw in The Athletic, have one of the most forgiving schedules in the NFL. There's still 17 NFL teams on it. It's gonna be fun. What immediately stands out to you as we put up the 2024 Commanders schedule for all to see?
I think in the first 4 games, I think the kind of the newness of some of the staffs. Obviously, Tampa Bay has a new offensive coordinator. I think it'll be a really good test right out the gate to kind of see where this offense is at. I think it's going to be beneficial that, our defense is new, our offense is new. It's going to make it hard for Tampa Bay to prep. But, Giants, they got a new defensive coordinator, no more Wink Martindale. Like, that's something I think that's going to benefit us tremendously. What does Blake Neighbors look like? Another question I have there. Cincinnati, Monday Night Football, man. I think, oh, God, that's going to be a doozy. But I think that's interesting because Monday Night Football to a road trip at Arizona is a little bit challenging there, I think, Craig. And, that's something that sticks out. Also, the late bye week is something that is kind of
How do you
annoying.
wind up with week 14 buys 2 years in a row? What are we doing, NFL?
But like last year, it was okay because you had your Thursday night game, I think week 6. So you kind of had that, again, like I said this all the time, like that mini bye. But you don't get the Thursday night game till week 11 at Philadelphia. And it's kind of like, okay, cool. I get the mini bye there, and then I get, the bye week 2 weeks later, which I think that to me is challenging. Also, I like that the schedule is backloaded with divisional opponents. I like that a lot. I think you get like a time early in the season through the first 8 games or so to kind of find your legs, kind of figure out who you want to be before you hit the meat of that divisional schedule. So those are a couple of things that stick out to me just early on. Obviously, if you want to do games like the Bears is always compelling because Caleb Williams, then Atlanta is another one that I think is interesting too. So
yeah. So I think that the we knew going in the Commanders were going to have, I think it's the least. I think they're ranked number 1 in terms of least travel in the season. So as much as that at Cincy, at Arizona trip stinks, you then go basically 4 straight home games. You're Cleveland at home, at Baltimore, which the drive from Landover to Baltimore is basically the same distance as from Ashburn to Baltimore is the same as Ashburn to Landover. Then you're home against Carolina, home against New York, and then you even follow that up with at New York, easy trip, home Steelers, at Philly, easy trip, even though it's a Thursday nighter, and then you're home bye. So that middle part of the schedule, as long as you don't get zapped by the first 4 weeks in the travel at Tampa, at Cincy, at Arizona, you've got like a nice rhythm there to your season in terms of not having to have any real hellacious travel. And then, even then, at New Orleans week 15, and then at Dallas week 18 are your last 2 road trips of the year. But I do think that, like, for the one of the biggest questions that we have about this team that we've started to see some answers with, as we talked about during the OTA segment, is like, what does the secondary look like? And specifically, what do the corners look like? And your first 4 weeks are Mike Evans, Malik Neighbors, Jamar Chase, and Marvin Harrison Jr. We're going to find out real quick, Logan, how good this secondary is, and also how they're going to handle elite receivers and a couple of different kinds of receivers in terms of speed versus size versus all the different challenges that those 4 guys present. And not to mention Chris Godwin, week 1 Tampa as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like with, something that I'm really, again, the thing I like about schedule release, I think it presents a lot of questions and it gives you time to kind of think critically about them. And so, I'm of the mindset right now that I think this team is going to get significantly better in the back end just because of coaching. But I think it'll be great to see that, week 1 through 4, like how right or how wrong are you with that? And then I think the other thing that I love about this schedule from a Commanders, just from a football standpoint, is you get some really like kind of battle-hardened teams. Cincinnati with maybe one of the top 3 quarterback in football. You get Baltimore week 6. I think the Bears will be interesting in terms of how they develop. The Steelers, like that whole division, the Browns, like I think those outside of divisional games with those teams that are really good football teams will be really interesting measuring sticks of how different this organization is this year. And so I love that we're playing hard football games early. And I also love that, like we're starting off with a divisional winner last year in Tampa Bay. Like, just like imagine if you win that game, you can put your stamp on the season, kind of get the momentum rolling. So I think that's kind of fun for sure.
Yeah, I also think that like there's, you talk about the forgivingness of the schedule or not. Like it is the kind of thing where because you finish last in the division last year, you're getting the last place schedule. That is the nature of it. The way that the schedule works, for those who don't know, like you play your own division twice, obviously. You play an entire other division in the NFC, an entire other division in the AFC, but then your remaining games are cross-division based off of finishing place. So big fancy way of saying like you're going to get in your other random games that have to get filled into your schedule, last place teams from last year. Now, does that necessarily mean that they're going to be easy? No, because teams change year over year. We see that every single year. But as we sit here in May, like you have Tennessee in week 13 is one of those games. I think the Bears, that's how they wind up on the schedule.
Carolina.
In week 8. Carolina, I think, is there because they play the NFC South, but like it's still another spot on the schedule where you have a team that you anticipate kind of being able to, like at the very least compete with. If not, you're actually coming in as the favorite. I would assume against a team like Carolina. But even like Tampa, who's a division winner last year, because the NFC South happens to be the team on the NFC side of your schedule this year, as you got Tampa, Carolina, Atlanta, and New Orleans. Like, I think that's a great measuring stick game for them to start. Like, I would much rather start with a game like Tampa that's, I would say, much more of Washington's equal, or kind of where Washington hopes to be. I think Tampa's probably the better team coming off of last year, certainly, than what Washington was. We'll see what their 2024 versions are. But that's the kind of team that you're hoping you live in their neighborhood versus like if you start against Baltimore, like you're not going to learn much from playing Baltimore in week 1. You learn something, of course, but that's a way better football team that's got way different goals and aspirations for you than 2024. I think Tampa, the Giants, those are two teams that off the top of that schedule, you have the chance to really compete and kind of test your mettle and be in close games late and see how your team reacts.
No, I think that's exactly right. And again, these are all NFL football teams, and it's so early to kind of be predicting like the ilk of these teams. Like I look at the Bears, and I think they're going to be a pretty good football team. I think Atlanta's going to be pretty good. I think Tampa's going to be pretty good. And so these teams that I think a lot of people kind of have chalked up as like like bottom of the barrel, easy wins. I don't necessarily agree that those are going to be. I think those teams have improved, and I think when you look at a team like Baltimore, and I think they have a lot of names on that team. They've had a lot of turnover in terms of defensive staff, right? They've lost a lot of offensive linemen. Like, what is their identity? They lost some skill players last year. They had to turn over some of their outside pass rush. Like, can they kind of resurge and be the Baltimore that we're all familiar with? And you'd like to think so, but you never know. Like, look at Philadelphia last year. Like, they lost both coordinators. They looked good through the first 11 weeks of the season, then fell apart. So I don't know. The schedule release is fun because it allows you to kind of pick which games you want to go to, but also like think about like our analysis of the Commanders last year at this point. Like I was very optimistic that the team was going to be good, but it didn't hit right for the team. And I've been a part of teams like that throughout my career where the schedule, the preseason expectations don't meet the in-season results. And so I think, again, there are some compelling questions here that could be answered. Even Cincinnati, who I'm very high on right now, like if Joe Burrow's hand isn't right, like they're going to be not a good football team. Like, and I know there's some questions about that with his rehab.
We practiced one last year for them in training camp. He had a calf injury that wound up keeping him out for the first couple weeks of the season. So if he's not there, like that's a very different team. Then again, was it Driscoll who was actually their no, it was Browning. It was their backup who like played well at the end of last year. So maybe they'll still be good. Like that is the nature of the NFL.
And I think people look at like Philadelphia, for example, and they say, "Oh my gosh, look at all these free agents they brought in. They brought in Bryce Huff. They brought in Devin White. They've brought in Vic Fangio. They brought in Kellen Moore to be the defensive and offensive coordinators, respectively. But that team still's got to gel. Like, who is Jalen Hurts at this point? Like, we've seen him play, to an MVP caliber level, and then we've seen him basically like fall apart near the last half of last year. And so much of their success is on him running the football. Does Moore kind of lean back into that, or they kind of go back to this pocket style, deep down the field approach that you saw when he was in Dallas? Does that work for Jalen Hurts even? I know they have the playmakers to get that done, but those are the things. Like, I think people look at Philly and say, "Oh my God, they've done such a great job in the draft and free agency," but the team's still got to come together. Dallas, man, they haven't done anything in terms of free agent acquisitions. They're relying on Dak Prescott to take them to the promised land, with a team that is kind of capped at the moment. They lost some offensive linemen. Obviously Tyron Smith goes up to New York. So the schedule release to me just presents questions. Tennessee, you mentioned Tennessee, like they got a new head coach. They've got a young quarterback. They've got a new O-line coach. What if they kind of find an offensive identity much like LA did when Sean McVay went there? I don't know. So that's where this schedule release and predicting the schedule and talking about these matchups, I think, is a lot of fun, but it's so early in the process. Like, these teams could become something completely different. Like New Orleans, Derek Carr could figure it out and they could be good and win the division. Who knows, man? I think that's the thing about this whole process that I find very interesting.
Yeah, I also think the other fun thing of schedule release day is like who's got primetime games, who's got whatever. You obviously get a chance to see those. Who's got the standalone games? Like the Jets still have a million of them. And you're like, did you guys learn nothing last year? But for Washington, actually that Tampa game to open the season, they put that at 425. So clearly they think that there'll be some interest in Baker 2.0, and I think their Fox is probably banking on Jada Daniels being the 100%. Starter, and they want that to be a thing. New York game's 1:00. Cincinnati obviously is 8:15 because that's Monday nighter. Arizona is a 4:05 because it's at Arizona. 1:00 for a couple weeks. The Carolina game is on CBS at 4:05. That's a wacky bit.
How is the Bears not a primetime game?
That's the one that like blows my mind. How is that a 1:00 game?
I don't get that at all. Like it's the two, pick one, pick two versus, and it's week 8, so maybe they're uncertain of how that's going to progress. And maybe rookie quarterbacks don't play well throughout the season. But man, that's one that I think a lot of people would be interested in seeing.
I'm stunned that one is not a primetime game, or at least a 4:25 game. But then the only other non 1:00 game currently is the Philly game. Obviously, that's a Thursday nighter on Prime Video. And then the final 2 weeks of the season are TBD. That is the nature of those. But they've already circled the Falcons game as one they could flex to Saturday, the 28th, and then the 29th, or 28th or 29th of December, and then first week of January. You'll have the Dallas game, and they obviously don't do the Commanders, or they don't do the Week 18 schedule, I beg your pardon, until Week 17 games are done, because they don't know, hey, is there going to be a divisional game where the division's on the line? That gets flexed into Sunday night. What games are 4:25? You can't have games with competing interests going at different times, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that's our show. Unless you have anything else on the schedule, Logan, which I think you honestly gave me more than I thought you were going to, because you really are not the world's biggest schedule fan.
I'm not a big schedule fan, because like as a player, I was very like, who's week 1? Good. Who's week 2? And that's how my little monkey brain worked. So as an analyst, I like kind of looking around the league and doing the research and seeing where these other teams are at. But in terms of like the game, like in terms of like the order of the games, I'm like, it's not really my bag, but I know a lot of people like it. So hopefully we're able to provide some insight on it.
All right, here's the last thing we'll do. You get to go on one road trip this year. Where do you want to go? Who do you want to go see the Commanders play?
If I want to see a game, I mean, I think the road trip is New Orleans, right? Because the Bourbon Street
that's the
and
correct
stuff, like
answer.
that's the one you want to go to.
Yeah.
But
we get to go to New Orleans in December when it's going to be freezing cold here, and I can go down to one of my favorite cities in the world and eat good food and have warmer weather. Yeah, done.
Tampa Bay or Arizona's not bad either. I mean, it's gonna be hot.
Although Arizona in September is not the greatest place.
Not the business. Yeah, not the business.
Still pretty hot. Philly Thursday night. That's gonna be a mess in the best way. Like I'm telling you, I've told this story before, but Philly is the only visiting stadium that I've ever been to where the fans know where the visiting press sits in the press box.
And they get after it.
Yeah, they just turn around. They're banging on the window. Ah, sucker. It's a good time. They're nuts.
That is a good time. Good for them.
Yeah.
Informed fan bases are always
a drunk Thursday night in Philadelphia for the people sitting in front of you in the press box. Okay. That's our show. If you like it, subscribe. If you don't, well, thanks for hate listening this long. We appreciate you and would love for you to do that again, and you can subscribe too.
45 minutes of hate listening.
Yeah. I hate listening to their scheduled talk. Those guys. But we appreciate you listening. Subscribe wherever you are watching or listening right now so you do not miss an episode. We'll be back next week with more OTA breakdowns, see what happens in week 2, some of the questions that we take from the first practice. Do they get answered or do they get furthered? Bum, bum, bum. And then we'll see what other fun shenanigans we come up with the rest of the offseason. For Logan, I'm Craig. We will see you next time on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command, which has a brand new home.
That's right. You can watch on YouTube at the Team 980.
You can also listen to full episodes in the free Odyssey app, which is now enabled with Apple CarPlay. So we'll just, follow you around. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Always streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. Coming up at 6 o'clock, what was it like to document the wild ride that was Caitlin Clark's 2023 season? We talked to a woman who did just that, Kristen Lappas, director of the new film Full Court Press. She joins us coming up at 6 p.m. Right now, though, it is Thursday. It is 5:30, and that can only mean one thing.
We tried to warn them. They didn't listen.
Yeah!
Every week, the Hoffman Show goes into the belly of the beast.
We read those comments, baby.
Never read the comments.
You know how this works. We put up our show in pieces for you to watch on demand on YouTube at the Team 980 at Craig Hoffman. You comment. Some of the comments are good. Some of the comments are bad. We pick the good ones, and we read them Thursdays at 5:30 and respond to them. I will say this was a fairly frustrating week of comments. We touched on some topics that brought in some third rails. Obviously, the biggest one being the Montana Senator Steve Daines and his week on Capitol Hill saying that he will not support the Commanders' pursuit of RFK if they don't find a way to honor the Native or American Indian heritage. Like, it's that plus Dan Quinn's shirt, and it's an interesting week to be in the comments, that's for sure. I think there was a lot of this on the Quinn story especially. Harmonica-less on NYC or Harmonica Lesson NYC. Oh, that's what it is. I think it's Harmonica Lessons NYC 6386. Non-story. The screen name was longer than the comment. Non-story. Pickpocket Jones. Great screen name, by the way. Only ones that cared about the shirt were some local journalists desperate for any content at all to write about and make videos on. 99% of fans wouldn't have even noticed if it wasn't pointed out to them. I disagree that it was a non-story. And that's actually part of the reason that it was a story. I think had some folks over at the Commanders realized that the national shows were going to talk about it, then they might have said, hey, Dan, can you change your shirt? We just don't need this. And like my whole take on it was it's a fairly non-story. It's just I wish, because, and like, I'm gonna try to be as clear as I can on this. I know some people are just gonna hear what they want, and that's fine. But if you try to actually listen to the words that I'm saying here, I think the reason it is a story is because there are a lot of fans who are still upset that the name got changed, that want it back and refuse to let it go. And whether you agree with them on the initial part of that or not, the name's not coming back. And they've already stated they're not going to use Native American heritage in the future name, something like Warriors. Like, it's just not going to happen. Now, does that mean that the Wetzel family and the Blackfoot tribe shouldn't be compensated in some way for the original logo and all those kinds of things? That's a separate conversation. One that I honestly don't care that much about. I mean, other than if people there's money made off something that you design, you should get some of that money, obviously. I think that's a fairly fundamental thing. But to me, it's like it was blown up by national media larger than it should have been. And I even had like one of my friends who does a national show like text me. Actually, multiple friends of mine who do national stuff text me about it. So like, I would have loved to have missed this story because it happened over the weekend. But the fact is, I went to a press conference on Tuesday where Dan was asked about it, and it became a pretty big story in this city that I work, and so I felt compelled to talk about it. We literally did one segment on it, not like we did a million. And so I even feel like I just spent too much time on this. The fact that it's a non-story. I generally actually agree with that, but it wasn't local people searching for something. It was national people who took the local people doing their job and were like, this is a thing. So there's that. But then you also have people like this, who I find genuinely annoying. Chia K says, yeah, that's really the nickname. CHYAHOK. Chia OK. Because I said, like, there are people that are offended by the logo and the old team name. And, you know, the callback with the feathers on the shirt, you know, they're not going to be happy about that. And so Chia OK says, so every girl who wears a cowboy hat with feathers in it to a Zach Bryan concert is racist? And it's like, here's what I would say, Chia OK. Why are you like this? No one is saying that. Literally, even the most sensitive people on this subject, which I don't even consider myself that. I'm like, yeah, I don't need to get into it, but I think people know, right? I'm certainly not the most sensitive person in the world on this subject. I and that person are not saying that. So why are you like that? What are you doing? Please don't take everything to its most extreme place. That's not helpful to the conversation. And then we have, I think this sums it up well from Nathan Yao. Says, it'd be better if more people could get behind the new name. The old one isn't coming back. That being said, it's a pretty good time to be a fan. I think it is a great time to be a Washington Commanders fan. I totally wish that more people got behind the new name. Not because I think it's like a specifically great name. It's just, it's so much more fun to talk about literally anything else. The last 3 days have honestly not been very fun to come to work. And I talk about sports for a living, and that's a bummer. Not that everyone deserves to have a good time at work. Not that I'm special and I deserve to have a good time at work. But God, if I can't have fun talking about sports, like, where did we go wrong? And the last couple of days have been pretty brutal. So let's put that behind us, move forward, and talk about OTAs. I thought this was a great, insightful comment from Sean Walker. Sean Walker 7238. I was talking about how interesting I found Jaden Daniels' mechanics. That he was a little more upright and a little more narrow in his stance than I anticipated. Not that I in any way think it's a problem or wrong. It was just different than kind of what I expected. And Sean makes a great point. Drop mechanics change depending on the height of the quarterback. With shorter leg quarterbacks, we teach, I guess Sean is a coach, we teach a larger drop step than taller quarterbacks strictly because you want them a certain distance from the line in order to see. I doubt that JD needs such large steps with him being 6'4". His vision shouldn't be interfered with. Lastly, when you speak of narrow feet, is he in frame, shoulder width, or inside frame, inside shoulders? I highly doubt a kid with his mechanics is the latter. Also, there is no particular point in a QB drop that needs to get to. It's called 2, 3, 5, 7 step, not yard drop, and those points, as aforementioned, change depending on the QB. I think that's totally right, and I just hadn't. You know, like Jaden Daniels is different than any quarterback that I've pretty much covered. Like, he is way more talented, way more technically sound, you know, in most areas. Like Alex Smith obviously comes to mind as a guy who was super technically proficient. Kirk was a much shorter quarterback. But like, I haven't covered a lot of dudes that are 6'4". I've covered Washington quarterbacks. Y'all know what those look like. Dudes who were inconsistent, bad mechanically, or not 6'4". For the most part, over the last nearly 10 years that I've been doing this. It'll be 9 in August. So I think it's really cool to see that up close and in person. And as Sean said, even though he is narrow, it's because he is narrow. He's not inside frame. His feet are slightly wider than his shoulders. He's not like some of these other quarterbacks whose feet are much wider than their shoulders that are shorter because they need to cover more space. And plus, Jaden's so damn bouncy and so explosive that when he drops back, he covers more ground anyway. So, like you say, it's a 2-step drop, a 3-step drop, 5-step drop, 7-step drop, and he's certainly covering the distance. Of course, within the last week, we also found out that Johnny Newton, the second-round pick for Washington, is going to miss some time. And our guy Blaine asked this question. Sincerely, I wonder if VR can help Johnny with learning the defense. Most of what they're learning right now doesn't include pads, and if his recovery from the first surgery is any indicator, he'll be back at the beginning of training camp or shortly thereafter. No harm, no foul. Now we just need a little luck. I do not think that virtual reality technology is nearly as helpful for linemen and specifically defensive linemen as it is offensive players and certainly quarterbacks. Is there no use? No. But most of what you're seeing as a defensive player, especially as a lineman, like, sure, you're checking splits and stances and seeing if you can pick up any tips. You're aligning. But Johnny Newton's been doing that stuff. Schematically, there's just not a lot that's happening for you. It really, in the trenches, especially on the defensive side, offensively, like who you target and all that kind of stuff, does get a little bit more schematic potentially. Which way you slide, like there's a little bit more to it. And not to say there's none of that defensively. Like, hey, we're gonna shift. Why are we shifting? What are we trying to get away from the tight end, away from a fullback, towards a tight end, towards a fullback? The quarterback's in gun, backs on right or left. We might shift to get our 3 technique or our 1 technique on a certain spot relative to any or multiple of those factors, right? But that stuff is kind of the same as it was in college in a lot of ways, or it's not completely new conceptually, and it's also not that complicated. It's one thing. So you can do that stuff on film. You can do that stuff watching it on the practice field. The biggest adjustment for a defensive lineman is technique and physicality. And that you're just not going to pick up on a virtual reality simulator or in the film room or whatever. Certainly you need to learn the defense. Certainly the more you know, the better. But I think with Johnny Newton, the nature of his position, like as long as he can get back in training camp by the time they put the pads on, he is not very far behind at all compared to if he was even an offensive lineman trying to learn different run schemes and different pass protection stuff and how they pass things off, the tandem that you play with. And nevertheless, a skill position player where now you're getting into a lot of the X's and O's that move around quite a bit during the course of a play. And we had our Dak versus Burrow conversation, which I think a lot of people left very silly comments because they just read the headline and didn't actually listen to the segment. People were mad at us. At least that's the way it reads. I think sometimes I read comments that are actually mad at the thing that we're talking about and not actually mad at us. But I feel like every comment's directed at me. So maybe that's a me thing. Is that something I got to figure out?
Just don't take it, personal.
Yeah, that's why the segment's called Never Read the Comments. Yeah, and yet, here we are every single week. But I was like, we didn't make the rankings. We agree that Burrow's better than Dak. You and I both were there, but there was a number of people that I respect that are really smart football people that are like, if I was starting a team from scratch, I would take Dak Prescott over Joe Burrow. And I was like, well, we're going to talk about this. Which did lead to a very funny comment, though. This is the way you do this. Because the video title when we cut the segment for YouTube was, when did Dak Prescott become better than Joe Burrow? And NWTTP says, I think it was right around the 43rd of Nevervember.
Nevervember.
That's a good one. Even if it was just the 43rd of November, that would be funny. But the 43rd of Nevervember?
Yeah.
That's good stuff. That's high quality joke writing right there.
And look, you find a lot of creative stuff on the internet, man.
That's why, despite the fact that we shouldn't read the comments, we read them anyway, because occasionally you get really good stuff. The most heated debate in the comments this week, outside of all of the name stuff that we're not diving into it, was the Angel Reese discussion that we had with Linnell last Thursday. Linnell was ready to pounce and say that the Mystics made a mistake in drafting Aaliyah Edwards over Angel Reese already, even though at that point they hadn't played a single game yet. And I would say, unsurprisingly to me, Anthony, most people agreed with Linnell. Now, the phrase, unsurprisingly to me, most people agree with Linnell is kind of a surprise within itself. Most of the time, people are like, what is Linnell thinking? But on this particular topic, I was not surprised that most people picked Angel Reese. And I'm going to be honest, I get it. I get it. The harshness, the definitiveness, the kind of vitriol of it caught me a little bit by surprise, but it's the internet, so not that much. The violence of the comments, such as this one from Erica Lover 3025. Lucky you, Erica. Traitors in DC. Traitors.
Wow.
Traitors, he or she says. At plug-me-in. Plug me in. The Mystics are idiots for passing up on her. They missed out on so much marketing and money by not drafting her. It was a slap in the face to her and the area. I hope she cooks them every single time they play each other. Dang. I don't know. I didn't see any mock draft that had Angel Reese going ahead of Aaliyah Edwards. I didn't see any WNBA reporter being like, yeah, this is a mistake. Now, Angel looked good in her debut. Like, Angel did in her debut what I think she's going to do all year. She's going to drop 12 and 8 nightly, which is a pretty solid WNBA rookie year. And over the course of her career, like, she could grow into a 15-point per game scorer, an 18. I don't know if she's ever going to be a 20-point per game scorer, but, like, with her work ethic, she's got that dog mentality. Like, she's going to play hard every single night, and she's going to work hard on her jumper. Like, maybe she does get to that. There's not a lot of 20-point scorers in the league, period. But maybe she does get to push like a 20 and 10 with regularity. Maybe even, I think 18 and 12 is more likely than 20 and 10. Because her rebounding ability is really, really high. And then I think the question is with Aaliyah Edwards is, like, is she an 18 and 8 type of player with a few more assists maybe? Although Angel's a pretty good passer. Like, is she more efficient? And I don't know, it's hard because in some ways I see like Aaliyah is more of a role player and Angel is more of like a featured player, but then they wind up putting similar numbers up and you're like, oh, well, what does that mean? And I think that's the tricky part because if you look at their college stats, like Angel had better numbers, but Angel was also their number one option. Aaliyah is playing with Paige Beckers and Nika Mule and some others, and I wouldn't say she's in the background. I mean, she's all conference, like she's awesome and can guard multiple positions and the whole deal. But offensively, like she's not that far behind. Her rebounding numbers aren't that far behind. Her scoring numbers aren't that far behind. And she was a second or maybe even third at times option. And I just think that's a relevant data point if you're building a team, not to mention the fit where clearly Mike Tebow, the general manager, and his son Eric, the coach, and the Mystics staff thought that Aaliyah Edwards and Shakira Austin were better fit than Shakira Austin and Angel Reese. And here's the thing that I think is most important in that discussion is of those three, of Aaliyah Edwards, Shakira Austin, and Angel Reese, and Shakira, remember, is only 23 years old, I think Shakira Austin is and will maintain being the best player of the three. And so you have a responsibility to build around the best player. And the best player, if the best player was Angel Reese, you should take Angel and make Shakira figure it out. But I don't think that's the case. And then the marketing side, yeah, it's kind of hard to argue anything on the marketing side right now because they just moved the game because of Angel Reese's presence from ESA to Capital One. What would happen if they were all at or if Angel Reese was here? Would they like 7, 8, 9 games at Capital One? Like, yeah, they definitely made money or lost money on this. And this is kind of the thing, though, is how often do we yell at owners for doing the thing that makes them money over the thing that we think is better for winning? And I realize that a large amount of people who are upset about this think that Angel will also help you win more than Aaliyah. But there are a lot of people that are like, they passed up money. What are they doing? They're marketing. And I realize it probably comes from a good place of wanting to see the team and the league succeed. But the fact that they're like, nah, we're going to do what we think is the best basketball move, like, good. I think that's applaudable. But maybe that's not just me, but certainly sheltering in the corner as the mob screams at us in the minority me on this one.
I mean, I just think I don't know. The Mystics are in a weird place anyway. Like, as far as the franchise goes, we weren't going to win this year, and probably not going to win next year. We got some time. So I think it would have just been, worth swinging for Angel for selfish reasons, though.
Yeah.
Obviously, she's going to, bring a lot more attention to the team, and, marketing her is probably going to be easier. But also, she would have just been able to, just grow this year, to be honest. They got Aaliyah playing in a reserve kind of role, and I don't know why you're doing that.
I wonder how much of that, how long that lasts.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
I mean, look, Stephanie Dolson's a vet. Like, she's a shooter. It's a good fit with Shakira. But, also, it's not always about who starts. It's about who closes. And, I want to know how long until Aaliyah Edwards is part of their closing lineup.
Okay.
But I think it's interesting to watch. They're going to be, Aaliyah didn't sign up for this, and frankly, neither did Angel. But especially Aaliyah didn't sign up for this. But those two are going to be compared forever because of not just Angel's star power, but Angel's ties to the area. The fact that she's from Baltimore, which I still think is hilarious that DC folks who love to crap on Baltimore will claim it in a second when it benefits them. I'm just saying, y'all lack consistency and you know it.
She's from the area to an extent. Those
Right.
Baltimore people are not a part of the DMV.
Oh, but Angel Reese is.
No. She's from the area, though.
What's the
broad
area called?
You said what?
What's the area called?
I can't hear you. I think I don't know what's going on, Craig. I can't hear you, though.
GH Sense 2626 says, it's LA who will be regretting passing on Reese twice. She's better than Brink and Ricky. You can't just say someone doesn't have a jumper so they aren't good. I think this comment is interesting for multiple reasons. We'll do the second part first. You can't just say someone doesn't have a jumper so they aren't good. Anthony, last time I checked, shooting is a pretty important part of basketball.
Very important.
And the fact that Angel's game has mostly, to this point, been 8 feet and in is a reason that she fell to number 7 in the draft. She, of course, is working on it and will continue to work on it. I would imagine her range eventually gets to 3-point range within the next couple of years, like game shooting 3-point range. We'll see how good she is at it. But she doesn't have a jumper, so you can't, what? Shooting, important to basketball. I also never said she wasn't good. I said I don't think she's as good as Edwards. The Brink-Ricky thing, again, most people who do this for a living would disagree with you, but dog, did you see Cam Brink last night? The move she put on, it was the one big highlight she had last night.
No, I didn't see it, but I'm about to check it out.
As a reminder, for those that haven't watched a ton, and admittedly, I haven't watched a ton of Cam Brink because she's out on the West Coast at Stanford. This is the 6'4" center from Stanford who was the number 2 pick in the draft. She put a crossover move on, drove down the lane, underhand dish to one of her teammates for a layup, go down the other side, they get a stop, come back down, very next possession, she hits a corner 3, and her jumper is smooth from that range.
Watching it.
I did not realize Cameron Brink had the game quite I thought she was a good rebounder, really great shot blocker, effective offensive player as a big.
Yeah.
No, she is skilled. I apologize, Cameron Brink. I was not quite so familiar with your game. Because I don't feel like she did that stuff at Stanford as much. Tara had her down on the post.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden it's whap, whap. I was like, oh, yeah, your godfather, Steph Curry. Y'all apparently did some handle drills together.
Wow, this is actually crazy.
That move she put on, ridiculous.
Yeah. And she hit the corner 3. Yep.
Also, she did have 5 fouls, which is the Cam Brink special. She's going to have to figure that out. A couple fun ones to wrap up here, Anthony. There's a commenter who's been in on a couple of videos recently at the sports astrology guy. The sports astrology guy. I'm already skeptical. Ready for this run-on sentence.
Uh-oh.
As I said before the draft, Jaden Daniels has a certain something about his personality that will ingratiate himself with his team and fans. And he has a body-mind connection to his skills that should translate well into him being a successful athlete. More importantly, if you think about all of the accomplished quarterbacks throughout the years, one common thing they have is performing under pressure, doing well under pressure. Daniels has that gene. Excuse any autocorrection errors. I am voice texting. Thank you.
I'm voice texting? It's hilarious.
Yes, that concluded Excuse any autocorrection errors. I am voice texting. Thank you. And I just got to know, what are you doing that is both so urgent that you can't take the time to add a couple of periods and maybe correct any errors, but is also not urgent enough that you can't watch YouTube while doing it and comment while doing it? I just want astrology guy.
Yeah.
I have questions. And if you've made it this far in this video, I need you to answer them. And really, I just have one question. What? Last comment for the day, and never read the comments. Back to where we started with old Senator Daines and that whole conversation. Michael Robertson, 7397. DC is not a part of the United States of America. It is a separate corporation from America. And I don't know whether that was meant to be like a hard political statement about like the DC swampy whatever, or it's the dumbest comment of the week. But I'm just going to leave that for people to chew on. I just kind of let it float out there. Let's never read the comments when we get back here on the Hoffman Show. You can hear our interview with Kristen Lappas. And, of course, if you want to leave your comment for use in next week's edition of Never Read the Comments, check out any part of the show you miss on YouTube at Craig Hoffman and at the Team 980. Kristen Lappas directed the new ESPN documentary Full Court Press. She joins us to talk about it next. The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. Always live, of course, as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming on YouTube at the Team 980. And joining us now is an Emmy Award-winning director. Her new film, Full Court Press, available in 4 parts on ESPN Plus. It chronicles Caitlin Clark, Kiki Rice, and Kamilla Cordoso along the 2023-24 college basketball season. It's Kristen Lappas. Kristen, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is fun.
I'm excited to have you. I was telling you as we were corresponding before having you on, like my wife and I binge watched this. It's such an amazing film. And I have to just ask to start, like everyone that's a documentary filmmaker in the sports space probably wanted to chronicle Caitlin Clark in 2023. How did you convince her that you were the right team to do it, you and your crew?
Yeah, I mean, it is very true. She was the most sought after athlete on the planet. I feel like the last 6 months. What's really interesting about this project is it was a partnership between the company that I work for, Words and Pictures, and then Omaha Productions, which was founded by Peyton Manning. And Peyton and Caitlin actually developed a friendship over the course of the last college basketball season. He just reached out to her and was like, hey, I've played in big time pressure situations. I'm a huge fan of you and what you're doing for the game. He was a huge women's basketball person, dating back to like when he was at Tennessee. Right. He had a really good relationship with Pat Summitt. Anyways, so, that relationship between the two of them really sparked this thing. He pitched her as like, hey, I'm coming off of, this show on Netflix called Quarterback. We want to try to figure something out and do this for women's basketball. Would you be interested? And then at that point, after she had committed, Kamilla and Kiki had not been approached yet. He came to me and the company I work for, Words and Pictures, and my boss, Connor Schell, and was like, hey, I think we should team up on this. I've covered women's sports for a long time in documentary films. And so he felt like I was the right storyteller to do this with him. So I'm grateful, eternally grateful that he, trusted myself and our team. And it was like a dream assignment, honestly.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, Connor Schell is, as much as anybody, the brains behind 30 for 30 back in the day at ESPN, incredibly well-regarded executive. Now, obviously working, as you said, with Words and Pictures. So as you convince Caitlin and then Kamilla and Kiki to do this, how cognizant are you as a filmmaker that these are extremely young people, that it's different than, covering a grown adult 28, 29, 30-year-old athlete, or certainly someone who's retired? Like these are 22, or in Kiki's case, she might have been 19 when you guys started doing this filming. How cognizant are you of that fact, and how does it change, if at all, what you're doing?
Very cognizant of it. I made sure to bring that up in our initial production meetings with Omaha and Words and Pictures that, hey, listen, I want to make sure that we're, Quarterback was an amazing show. This is going to be different. These women are still trying to figure it out. They're still, college students that have a very different situation, a very different, type of stress in their lives. They're not living in their mansions with their wives. It's just the nature of the show is different. I wanted to make sure that people understood that going in, and it wasn't like we were trying to do exactly what Quarterback did. But I think there's something really special about documenting college women at this stage in their lives. I think they're really authentic. They're fresh. They're not jaded by cameras and the media. They were really excited to participate in this. And I think that they let us in a way that, I've done, the last project I worked on was Giannis Antetokounmpo, a documentary on him. And, sometimes when you are trying to capture, the everyday scenes with those like larger than life superstars that have been doing this for a long time, there are a lot of levels and layers of people that you have to get through in order to like get the access with that athlete. Whereas like with Caitlin, Kiki, and Kamilla, it was really just myself and our 3 field producers who I have to credit. I can't be in 3 places at all times.
Sure.
The edit was happening simultaneously to the shooting. And so we had Hannah Beer, Susie Beck, and Adrian Gallagher, 3 female producers that were embedded with the 3 women throughout the season. And it was really just like a text conversation between those 3 women and Caitlin, Kamilla, and Kiki. Hey, what are you doing this week? What are we allowed to be there for? And so anyways, the approach was very different. I think it's refreshing. I think it's authentic. And I hope, people are seeing that and that's coming through in the film.
So do you feel a sense of like that you need to protect them at all? Because I'd imagine there's got to be at least some like human element of that, but also balancing like, no, this is journalism. This is a documentary. Like the whole goal is the access and to show people. So like, how did you as a human being like balance those competing probably at times feelings?
Yeah, I mean, you always feel that when you're making a film, right? You're trying to be true to the story, but also, like you said, you're a human being and you spend a lot of time with these people and you develop a relationship with them. And so it was really important for me to always be overly communicative with them, to try to just explain like what we were trying to do. For example, Caitlin in the locker room after the Nebraska loss, she kind of loses her temper. Very uncharacteristic of her to like, throw something. She knew the cameras were there. And, I just tried to explain to her that me personally, I think audiences really connect with scenes like that because we've all had those bad days. And if you just kind of like curate only and you only show the good times and the happy times, that's just not real life. And people don't connect as much with that. So I just tried to explain to them that like allowing fans and audiences to see, the highs, the lows, their flaws, is really important when you're making an authentic documentary. And they all bought in, honestly. And we didn't hold back on anything really.
Kristen Lappas, the documentary is Full Court Press. It's available now on ESPN Plus with us here on the Hoffman Show. So I'm so curious, and hopefully the audience finds this interesting too, but I've always been so interested in this as like a media person. The process of a documentary, and obviously you said this one's pretty different. It's put out so quickly after the season ends. Like the edit is happening simultaneously, which I didn't know before I was talking to you, but I probably could have guessed now as I think about the timeline. Like that's nuts that you guys got all this done so quickly. So what is the process like of capturing, sorting through the footage, editing, deciding kind of the storyboard of how it all is going to come together? Like what's that process like in as much detail as you want to give? Also, considering you probably talk about this for 2 hours and we're doing a 20-minute interview.
Yeah, I could definitely nerd out on this topic for 2 hours for sure, but I'll try to keep it quick.
Maybe we'll have you back another time to do that one.
So first and foremost, doing a show of this magnitude, of this length, and making sure that it still feels elevated and cinematic and the storytelling is up to the standards that personally I have, but also Words and Pictures, Omaha, and ESPN have. It was a lot of pressure. We first and foremost needed to make sure that we had the right team in place. So I'm sure a lot of people don't know this, but that there were 30 people living and breathing this story for the past 6 months. It wasn't just me, this small team of people. Like we had 5 editors, we had 4 producers in the field with these women. We had story producers that were sorting through footage, associate producers, production assistants, the list can go on and on and on and on. When this, we're filming 28 days with these women, probably 6 hours a day. So when you do the math, that's a lot of footage to sort through. And I tell everybody this, and it's funny, it's like, how were you there for that moment? It's so crazy. And the answer is that not every day is exciting and not every shoot day, ends up making the final show. You have to be around for a lot of days in order to, block out and be there for the right moments. And so, I'm going to give some credit to the associate producers, Riley Bloom and Porter Dickey. They literally spent the last 6 months with headphones on in an edit bay, just sorting through and watching every single frame of footage that we shot. And then they would meet with myself and the story producers, and they would say like, hey, listen, this moment's really good. Or Dawn Staley had this awesome like Nat in practice that we think could go here. And so I have a storyboard and an outline of the entire series, which is constantly ebbing and flowing and changing. And as I'm getting that information from them, I'm adjusting and moving things around. But the truth of the matter is like, when you do a retrospective film, I actually find the story process much, much easier because you're able to kind of map out, like you already know what the beginning, the middle, and the end are. For this, it's constantly changing. Like we started the season and Dawn Staley told me, I don't think we're going to be very good this year. Like, we lost all of our starters, and then they end up having a perfect season and winning a national championship. So constantly, like, I wish that you could see the big story map that we had, because it's like, all the pieces are constantly moving around. And it is like a big puzzle, and you hope you get it right in the end. And when the light bulb finally goes off and you feel like you have the right structure, it's like a really rewarding feeling. I would argue that's the best kind of the high for me, is like when it's all clicking in the edit, as opposed to like it coming out for the world to see. That experience is way cooler for me.
Now we just have a new idea for a documentary about the documentary, including a time lapse of the storyboard over the course of months. Kristen Lappas with us here on the Hoffman Show. So I want to dive into the players themselves real quick. As you meet with Caitlin and you watch her year unfold, what stood out to you about her? And did anything change with her? Because there's this moment in the doc where she says, like, I don't feel like I've changed. Like, this is what I'm meant to be. But as an observer, like, did you see anything change with her throughout the year?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that her values, her morals, what's important to her, basketball, family, her teammates, winning over anything else, like, none of those things changed, which I really appreciate, because let's be honest, for a 22-year-old to receive the type of attention and the media coverage that she received over the last 6 months, like, I don't know how I would have acted or changed, because of that. And I give her a lot of credit. She's one of the most poised and mature 22-year-olds I've ever met. And she did stay true to those things. But of course it does change you in small ways, she said in our series, like, sometimes you just want to be a normal kid. And she got to the point where she literally could not leave her dorm or the practice facility without being, like, hounded by dozens of fans. Like, even in New York City, right? Like, you'd think, oh, she can go about her business in New York City. We were filming with her and people were stopping her. She's on the big, Jumbotron, a picture of her, and she's posing in front of it. So life just is never going to be normal for her. But I think she handled it really, really well. And I will say this. So we interviewed her twice, like in the big master sit-down interviews that are usually between 2 and 3 hours. Once in January, and then again after the draft in April. And I did notice that she was a little more confident. She wasn't holding back as much. I think some of the sound was like really revealing. I was like, okay. She was, the selection committee kind of did us dirty. And she told the Geno story about how he didn't recruit her. So some things that I felt like maybe she was holding back and being a little more reserved in that first interview. I feel like she finally, had that a little more swag about her and was a little more forthcoming in that interview.
Yeah, I will also say this as someone who's been so Alicia, as the audience knows at this point, like, Alicia Clark is a very good friend of mine. We've known each other since we were both at Middle Tennessee State, at this point, far too many years ago. But Alicia's, so like when we go out with Alicia in public, we are fine because she's 5'10". And like, that's just short enough to blend in. But like, if you're Caitlin Clark and you're 6 feet tall and you're walking certainly through Des Moines, Iowa, nevertheless in New York City, like, there is just a like, oh, who's that athletic looking, very tall person? Oh my God, that's Caitlin Clark. There's just not that many people it can be. And so I can imagine you add your cameras and the swaths of people around her naturally, like, that's gotta be overwhelming. And I actually ask, like, did you ever feel bad having the camera there be like, oh, maybe she could have slipped through, but this camera, I don't know what kind of cameras you're using. Maybe you're using little, Sony or whatever brand DSLRs that are now super high quality. It's not like you're necessarily walking with a giant film camera at all times, but like, are you ever like, oh, maybe we're not helping her blend in here?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I will say this, that our philosophy as a team was, we have a very small footprint when we do these production. Like, it's not a commercial shoot. There aren't 15 people and lights and this and that. Like, that's not really how we operate, because we want to make sure that we are letting them kind of live as natural and normal of a life as possible. So it was really just one producer, a camera, and an audio person for the most part. And I do think that, like, having that really small footprint helped, and honestly just helped get better footage, better scenes. Coach Bluter was, for example, a little bit reserved and intimidated by allowing cameras into like the most sacred spaces of their program, right? Like, my dad was a college coach for 25 years. Like, I know that how big of an ask that is. But I think once she saw that, like, it wasn't going to be a distraction, like, you know, our camera would kind of slip into the back of the locker room, our audio person would stand outside the locker room so they weren't in there. I think they started to become a little more comfortable with us being there.
Gotcha. Kristen Lapis with us for another minute or two here on the Hoffman Show. I have to ask you about Kiki, as obviously we're here in D.C. She grew up here. Her aunt is Susan Rice. I actually didn't know that. I'd known about Kiki for a while. I didn't realize that Susan Rice, the former Obama administrator, cabinet member, is her aunt. Her parents, highly accomplished professionals. She went to Sidwell and Friends. Like, it's an intense family in that way, but you also show some scenes where they're having fun playing ping pong. Like, her dad and her are laughing a lot in the film. I'm curious if that intensity, though, shaped her in any ways that you found like profound, and how their attempts to balance out that intensity kind of created what we now see as Kiki Rice, amazing athlete.
Yeah, I do think that the way that she grew up in like an elite political family, she also had like a ton of relatives that had played professionally. Her dad played at Yale, you know, really smart family, just impressive across the board. I think that it allowed for her to not feel the pressure as much as maybe the average kid that didn't grow up with spotlights on her family, so to speak. You know, like, she saw her aunt in the media, in the public facing, you know, in a public facing role for so many years, that for her, she kind of just has this very quiet confidence about her, where it's like, she's reserved and she's not like the most gregarious person, but she's like, you know, the cameras, you know, the spotlight, it doesn't really faze me, which I think is going to really bode well for her as her career continues. Like, I don't think that any platform or stage or game is like too much for her. Like, I don't think the pressure is going to break her because of the way that she grew up. But also, like, you know, they're a really competitive family. They have high expectations. And I do think that's in the back of her head when your parents expect you to be not only, you know, great on the basketball court, but like a really upstanding, like, student and leader. I think that's where she feels a little bit more pressure. And I think that, like, a scene that I really fought for that Kiki at first wasn't as comfortable with, and then once she, you know, kind of understood what we were doing, was the therapist scene.
Yeah, that was
I think
amazing.
that was really feeling, right? Like, people don't get to see an athlete working with a sports psychologist and kind of how they feel and the pressures that they are facing on a day-to-day basis. So I really appreciate her allowing us in for that moment.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a quote, I think it's from the sports psychologist. My buddy, Wes Dunning, trained her at Healthy Baller here in DC. So shout out to Wes. But there's a reference to something that I presume is Wes. Maybe it's another trainer that Kiki worked with, saying like, you know, what should I know about her? And it's like, she's not quite as confident as you would think, considering how good she is. It's a really magical scene. So I'm glad that you guys were able to get that in. I have time for one more question, so I'm gonna just go for it, Kristen. There's a bunch of stories that emerged yesterday about season 2, and the potential to do this again next year. Obviously, Paige Becker's name comes up. Kiki's back for another year. What can you tell us, if anything, about the potential for a sequel here?
As much as I would love there to be a second season, and it feels like a no-brainer to me, nothing is official yet. I don't know who leaked that, but I do know that, you know, Brian Lockhart, who runs ESPN original programming, is a close mentor and friend of mine. I worked for him for a bunch of years at ESPN, and I know he was really, really happy with the overall product of this and women's basketball. So I feel confident. Nothing set in stone yet.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Kristen, this was great. We'll have to, at some point, when you're doing a full-on media tour for a film you've just released, would love to have you back and talk more about the documentary process. This was really great. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Hoffman Show.
Oh my gosh, this was fun. Thank you for having me.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. You missed any of the show today, including our schedule talk off the top. We talked about the Commanders' 2024 schedule released, 22 and a half hours ago. You can check it out on the podcast, The Hoffman Show. Just search it in your favorite podcast app. It'll pop right up. Hit subscribe, hit follow, hit whatever the button is in that particular app that you like. And you'll never have to miss anything. You can listen on your time, on demand, anytime, anywhere. And, of course, you can always listen in the free Odyssey app, whether via podcast. Our podcast, there's a podcast portion, I guess, of the app. Then there's the listen live element, which includes the rewind feature where you can rewind to any of our shows within 24 hours. So, no, whatever's easiest for you, we're there. We're just trying to make life easy, Ant. We even let people watch us on television.
He ain't lying.
We're on YouTube.
Yep.
Can't possibly be missed.
Every day.
Every single day.
4 to 7.
Isn't it kind of terrifying how much of us exists out there on demand for people?
Maybe a little bit. Because we pull back the curtain, you know.
Yeah, sometimes. Also, I'm like, I don't ever want to run for office. Right? I'm going to be very clear about that. But there are people that do this job or that like host political podcasts, for instance, that do. And I just imagine in the future, like some poor sucker on some campaign who's like, I got to do Oppo research on person X who used to host a podcast. And someone's going to have to go listen to like 400 episodes of a podcast, try to find something terrible that someone said to use it in an ad against them in a political thing.
Well, that'll be a lot of fun for them.
Good thing is it's not going to be me because that's not for me. I have thoughts on lots of things. There are people like, would you ever run for office? And I'm like, no. I'll run on the pavement for up to 13.1 miles.
Oh, that's it?
For right now. I got to feel.
You don't want to do 26.2?
Bro, I got to be able to walk after I do 13.1 before I even think about 26.2.
Are you back walking regularly now?
Yeah, no, I've been fine
right, just making
on
sure.
that level. I ran today, though. It felt terrible. Part of it was hot and humid out, and I was running into the wind at one point.
That's good.
Significantly uphill into the wind. And it's like there's no way to do an easy run uphill and into the wind. It is by nature hard. But my legs just didn't work. Don't love that.
This was your first day running?
No, I've done on a couple of runs.
Okay.
But just none of them have felt good. I'm doing a little bit more biking though. And so maybe I keep running on days after I bike. And so I think my legs are just sore from the biking.
Might be it.
Been back on the Peloton a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Biking, I need to get back to doing some outdoor biking. That's also it's fun. Cover a lot more ground, so you get to see a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, you get out on some of the trails, and, you can bike. And the time that you could have run, 6 miles, you can bike, 20.
But then you have to worry about, telling someone to get out the way or,
Yeah, it depends on how busy the trail is and where you are.
Okay.
Because, you have in the D.C. area and the Virginia side of things, which is where I've spent more time, you have, Rock Creek Park. That's not really a great biking trail, depending on what part you're on. It's kind of thin, kind of narrow in a lot of different parts. But there's also some parts that are better for it, depending on where you are. Mount Vernon Trail is kind of thin. Don't love biking. But I also don't hate biking on the Mount Vernon Trail. The WNOD is not bad. But if it gets real busy with people, it's not very fun. And you get up into some of the Crescent Trails and some of the other stuff up in Maryland. There's a lot of options. That's the good news. Definitely all better running trails than biking trails.
Mm-hmm.
But also it's cool to see. I think it's cool to see different parts of the DMV. Now Rachel's she's doing a marathon. So her long runs are going to get real long, and she's probably also going to want to find places that are different so she's not running the same exact route all the time.
Yeah.
So I think I'll probably take my bike out when she does some of her long runs, and I can like slow ride with her along her run for some of it to save my legs, and then be like, okay, I'm going to go biking now, and then come back to her, and she'll still be running. Yeah. Nikola Jokic and friends are going to run up and down a court tonight.
They are indeed.
Talk about a transition. Hey, now. Are they going to run the Wolves right out of the playoffs? That's the question. They're up 3-2 after looking terrible. And what did I tell you after game 2, Anthony? I just full on finger wagged you. What did I tell you after game 2? After Jamal Murray absolutely collapsed and imploded and threw the heat pack, and Michael Malone was losing his marbles and the whole deal.
He should have been suspended. That's what should have happened.
I did tell you that, and I still stand by that, which is funny because I got a comment on one of the videos, which I thought was like accurate. Someone was like, Draymond Green had to kick someone in the nuts like 3 times before he got suspended. I'm like, yes, he should have been suspended the first time. Although Draymond's, at least there's an argument that he just has terrible control of his limbs, and it wasn't like intentional, versus Jamal, like, oh, whoopsie. But yeah, he threw a heat pack at a ref, missed, and had it go on the floor where someone could have slipped and seriously hurt themselves.
And threw a towel.
The whole deal. But I told you, sometimes it's actually better to just let go of the rope. Sometimes there are just times where you got to go. Get it all out now. We start over tomorrow. And that's exactly what the Nuggets did. Apparently, that all started. Great reporting from Sam Amick in The Athletic on this. It started at a team dinner that Aaron Gordon didn't make. Have you seen this story, Anthony?
I have not. This is news to my ears.
So they have banned Aaron Gordon from team dinners from the rest of the series. So DeAndre Jordan is the organizer of the team dinner, and he and the Nuggets have said, sorry, Aaron, we love you. You're an essential part to our success. But because you missed the team dinner and then things turned around, we can't mess with the juju. Aaron Gordon has remained banned from team dinners the last couple of nights that they've been in Minneapolis and whatever else they do in Denver. So that's just the key to the series, is actually let go of the rope, go to a dinner, have one of your best players not come, and then don't let that person back near your steak.
So what would happen if the Timberwolves didn't have Rudy Gobert in the building and they went on to...
I mean, should they do that? Because they won game 2 without him.
Yeah, they did. So now what?
I don't know.
What superstition are you leaning towards?
I think I'd rather just have all my best basketball players on the floor.
Right.
And Gobert's certainly one of the ones for the Timberwolves, but they got to do something different. Like Nikola Jokic, to me, Anthony, it comes down to this. Like this, here's the actual hard-hitting analysis. Sports and the greatest athletes in sports, they're superpowers, all of them. The thing that, forget athleticism, forget mental strength, forget quickness, speed, throw power, shot range, whatever the sport and thing that is, or characteristic you want to throw out there. The one tide that binds them all together is they are elite problem solvers. And Nikola Jokic has solved his Rudy Gobert problem. Earlier in the series, Gobert bothered him. They had other defenders helping. Like the way they were playing Jokic and the force that Minnesota was playing with really bothered Denver. And Murray being injured didn't help. The fact that his calf is seemingly feeling better is obviously a big part of this as well. But they just kind of adjusted and figured out, like, okay, you're going to be super aggressive, so we're going to figure out how to use that against you. And they've gotten out and run, like they've leaked guys out. They have tried to be in transition a little bit more. They've found ways to relieve the pressure, and this is the benefit of them having the versatility. This is kind of what I always said about NBA playoff series is teams make adjustments until one team makes an adjustment that the other team's not good enough to adjust to. And that, to me, is what happened in this series, is the Nuggets were like, fine, you're going to make life miserable for Jamal Murray bringing the ball up the floor. We're going to take the ball out of his hands. Same thing for Jokic. Okay, we got more dudes who can dribble, and Aaron Gordon, luckily enough for them, not allowed at the dinner, can play point guard. And so they're like, okay, you want to take some of these guys like a Karl Anthony Towns and have him guard 94 feet. That's going to wear him out. And he's super, foul prone. So that's been an issue. And they just found a solution. We'll run our offense starting with Aaron Gordon. And they're a smart enough, versatile enough basketball team that works for them. And they've been able to have Gordon bring up the ball in the half court, get the ball to Murray or Jokic, then run a bunch of Jokic-Murray pick and rolls, get Gobert involved in the pick and roll, which has been his bugaboo in the playoffs for 8 years. And now they're on the verge of winning the series. And they, on the other side, they're like, yeah, Anthony Edwards is awesome. He's going to get his. Everyone else, nothing. And it's worked. And unless the Timberwolves have another adjustment in them, this series is ending tonight in Minnesota, on the road for Denver, and they're still the title favorites.
Yeah, I think also in addition to the Nuggets making an adjustment and the Timberwolves sort of failing to adjust to that, the fact that Mike Conley's out, I think also hurts the Timberwolves to an extent just because they don't have another guy outside of Anthony Edwards Carl Anthony can, create his own shot, but he just struggled the last couple of games.
But a shot creator is one thing, an offense creator is another, right? Like, okay, hey, there's 7 on the shot clock. Let's dump the ball to you and see if you can create something.
Yeah.
Or can you wind up with the ball in your hands? But, it's a decision-making sport.
Yep.
And I want Mike Conley making decisions, even if it's someone else besides me is going to shoot.
Yeah. And I just don't think they have enough of that going around right now. And I hate to say it, man, I think the Timberwolves go home tonight. I think.
I don't hate to say it because they annoy me.
Really?
Carl Anthony
It's
Towns.
Carl Anthony?
Cat is one of the most annoying players in the league.
And Rudy, too.
Rudy's kind of annoying.
Yeah, Rudy
I have a little bit more respect for Rudy and how he's continued to try to improve his game. And, I think Rudy Gobert's grown up a lot. Obviously, the COVID stuff early, that showed an immaturity with – and he also, we didn't realize just how serious that was going to be as a society. But, still was very, very silly and very stupid and looked extra stupid. It looked silly at the time, and then he tested positive and was, one of the first main people to ever test positive in terms of notoriety, and it looked extra wild. But I even say, okay, he apologized for all that stuff, whatever. I just think as a basketball player and as a person, Rudy has continued to mature and grow, but he's still, a lot of people aren't super fond of Rudy Gobert. And a lot of people aren't super fond of Carl Anthony Towns. And which is interesting because a lot of people love Anthony Edwards, and I'm just when is that going to blow up? Or if you're Tim Connolly, do you blow it up preemptively? Be we're going to build around Ant, and these other guys can go. Because we built this team to beat the Nuggets, and it took them 2 games to figure us out, and then they blew our doors off.
Yeah.
So we'll find out. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Real things to close out the show next. Yes, it's the official song that Anthony will use to remind us that he's not here tomorrow. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. I'm here tomorrow. It's Thursday for everybody else.
Except me.
Except for you.
It is definitely Friday.
Yeah. So there's that. It's the Hoffman Show, a show that is on 5 days a week. No matter what, even if whether I'm not here, Anthony's not here, the show will go on. It will go on tomorrow. Clinton Yates ready to join us. I know he's got thoughts on the Leonsis interview from earlier in the week. Also doing what are we doing tomorrow? We've got some NBA playoff talk. Might get into the NBA draft a little bit more. If not, we'll hit that heavy starting next week. So plenty of good stuff tomorrow here on the show. Also, Anthony, I got a listener email that put forth a premise about the Commanders that I thought was really interesting. We talk a lot about the Cardinals being like a similar team that maybe the Commanders follow from last year, and some of the other comparisons we make to other teams in the NFL for Washington. And he put forth one that I hadn't thought of yet, and I wanna explore the space. So we'll do that tomorrow.
The Texans.
That's one that a lot of people look at. But this was a different one.
From like last year or like?
Yeah, last year.
Okay. I'm trying to think.
Well, since you won't be here, you'll have to listen to it on the Hoffman Show podcast this weekend. Or if you ever miss the show, are you more of a podcast or more of a YouTube guy if you go back and check something out?
I'm a podcast guy. I'm constantly on the move. So, like, Zaires and them podcasts, I think I've only seen one YouTube up there. And it was like the first one when I was sitting down at IHOP, so I had time to watch it.
Yeah.
But usually, I'm on the move, so I just listen to it.
What's your IHOP order?
I definitely get 2 pancakes, 2 eggs, 2 bacon, the 2x2x2, and it costs like $8.29 or something like that.
Yeah, that's good. I used to always be a big steak omelet guy back in the day.
I can't eat steak in the morning.
I wasn't always at IHOP in the morning.
Oh, well, that too.
Yeah. It was funny because we were in South Carolina this past weekend where I grew up, and we passed an IHOP that, that I was did wedding DJ stuff when I was in high school and everything, right?
Yes, sir.
A lot of the audience just learned that for the first time, but I did. And me and my guy Frazier, when we would get tips, we look at each other and be like, IHOP night?
Uh-oh.
Hell yeah.
That's tough.
And so my guy Frey and I was like 17 years old probably. Frey was like an actual adult, which is like now being the age that he was, like, is even cooler to me that he took that time for me. He was such a great mentor and just the best dude. But he and I would go to IHOP late night. And sometimes, like, if there were other DJs from our company that got back at the same time, we'd be like, we're going to IHOP. Want to go to IHOP? And so go late night, get food, paying cash and keep whatever the change was.
Sound like a lot of fun, man.
It was good times.
A lot of memories.
Good times, good memes, good vibes, good omelets, good pancakes. You're welcome, IHOP, for the free advertisement from 17-year-old Craig. I don't know that I've had you since.
Really? Because of the pancakes.
That's the thing. Once you discover you got a dairy allergy, buttermilk pancakes are not quite as appealing.
No, sir.
Or an omelet that's got a lot of cheese in it.
That too.
Yeah. It's not as good of a time over here anymore, bro. I don't know what to tell you.
It's all good.
It's for you get to still have the pancakes. I think there's only one thing left to do.
Real things.
We're not gonna be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
All right, we don't have a lot of time left in the show. That's what Anthony just told me.
Actually, we can do...
It's all right. It's all right. We need one. From the Cowboys release video, they FaceTimed a bunch of people. One of them was Dawn Staley.
Yuck. the y'all doing?
That's it. That's all that needed to happen during Real Things today. I have no notes. There's nothing more we need to add. Yuck. An Eagles fan, Philly girl, Dawn Staley, sees Jerry Jones and other people from the Cowboys. Yuck. That's it. That's the show. Ant, have a great weekend. I will see you tomorrow.